So I know I sat through school all the time. I was just looking at all these stuff in math, and I just looked at all these formulas they handed me day in and day out, and I just kept going, when in the world am I going to use any of this? This is just stupid. Turns out I use it every day for work. That's how I pay my mortgage. So you start to learn all these things that you know, these certain formulas, like all your famous trig formulas, your a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? You got your sine over a equals the sine over b over b. You go all the way down the line. I got a formula that I use pretty often. It's actually really complicated. If you write it out in Excel, it's about yay long in fine print. And it determines how much the weight of something changes when it's sitting on the ground versus when you pick it up and put air under it. Things are buoyant in air, so it weighs less. And I have to calculate that out sometimes. And I've got this formula. I've got formulas coming out my ears that I use every day. And there's another one we'll use too. It's in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, starting in verse 9. Here we have, it says there, but as touching brotherly love, ye need not that I write unto you, for ye yourselves are taught of God to love one another. And indeed ye do it toward all the brethren which are in all Macedonia. But we beseech you, brethren, that ye increase more and more, and that ye study to be quiet, to do your own business, and to work with your own hands as we've commanded you, that ye may walk honestly toward them that are without, and that ye may have lack of nothing. He encourages them, says, you love one another, you love everybody else, continue to do that, but I got a math formula for you. I got a math formula. You're going to take studying to be quiet, plus doing your own business, plus working with your own hands, and that's going to equal a good, honest living. A good, honest living. That's going to make sure that we have lack of nothing. So we break that formula down for a quick second, and we talk about studying to be quiet. Studying, in this context, you're talking about having an ambition, looking and trying and working out a way to be quiet. And we're not talking about so that people can't hear you. It's not about not so people can't hear you, but it's about that you're not attracting the wrong kind of attention. You know, I can go out there and spend a few $1,000s and make my ratty old little 9-year-old Volkswagen something flashy and attract all kinds of attention, and then I'm going to go park it up on UC's campus and leave it overnight, and when I come back, you'll know exactly how much attention it got. I might be missing a few windows and a couple accessories off of it. Attracting the wrong attention. But here we have this idea that Paul tells us that we're going to study to be quiet. We're going to attract the right kind of attention. We're not going to attract the wrong kind. You know, we should have that kind of life. We would want to. Because in Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 1, it said there that better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifices with strife. You know, it's the old rap game, you know, the more money we get, the more problems we get. It goes right along with it. It's truth sometimes if we find in some odd parts of music. But we're looking for a peaceable life, a quiet life. And that's what we're trying to get out of it. And how do we might get that? Well, first of all, we can pray for it. Certainly we can pray for it. In one context, in 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 2, we're told that we're to pray for kings and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. We can certainly pray for it. Pray that the environment around us helps, and pray for ourselves as well. But that's not the only key to this, because it's a formula. We're adding that, and next we're going to add on to doing our own business. And you think about what this means, and as we'd say today, just mind your own business. Keep your nose out of everybody else's. You know, we've got a society today that just loves to be in everybody's business. I saw something, it popped up in a big article, and it was a whole bunch of speculation as to what Brad Pitt's tattoo means. He's got 3 lines right here of different lengths. And there was this whole discussion in this magazine article about, what do you think they mean? I don't know. I think it's aliens. It doesn't matter. That's his business, not mine. I shouldn't have my nose in it. You know, we have to tend to our own affairs because, quite frankly, just as the day, you know, the trouble of the day is enough, I got enough to worry about myself. I don't have to be worrying about what's going on in someone else's life. That's the idea of being a busybody. Now, we have to throw out and make sure that everybody understands we're not talking about, Neville, I'm worried about you. That is not, Neville, I noticed your car wasn't at your house at 2 o'clock this morning. Where might have you been? There's 2 very different conversations we're having there. One is just being a busybody, and the other is being concerned for the welfare of a brother or sister. But we need to make sure that we're minding our own business. David was a fine example of this. Or Daniel was a fine example of this. He minded his own business. Just his whole life, when you really get down to it, in captivity, he was minding his own business. You know, it's important because even Proverbs chapter 1, verses 10 through 19, we won't read now. But what does it tell us about? It tells us all about the troubles we can get into when I mind everybody else's business. It's a story about that dog who goes for a walk, and he comes back every day with his master at the end of this leash, and he is just wasted tired. He said, "How far do you take that dog for walks?" He says, "We only go around the block." But he must be out of shape. He says, "No, his problem is he can't just walk around the block. He's got to stop at every fence. He's got to sniff every post. He's got to get up to every hydrant." That dog's a busybody. It's got his nose in everything it shouldn't be in, and that's going to make him tired. It'll make us tired too. Well, there's 2 out of 3 for our formula. We're going to talk about the third. We're going to have to add in working with our own hands. That means, make accomplishments with our own efforts to support our families and to support those in need. Really, it's kind of a consequence, a natural consequence, I should say, of minding our own business. We mind our own business, we work with our own hands, and God produces the increase. He's the one who produces the increase. We work to keep out of trouble. That was one of the consequences of sin. It helps keep us out of trouble a little bit, right? I find myself, it's terrible. It's one example, I'll be traveling next week. I'm going to sit for 2 or 3 nights in a hotel room in a little town where there's nothing to do. I think they're having a first run showing of some Hitchcock movies. They're that far behind in their movie theater. There's nothing to do there. So I'm going to sit in a hotel room, and what am I going to be tempted to do? Everything. I'll probably end up eating a whole pizza just by myself because there's nothing else to do. We stay busy, we work with our own hands, we pretty well stay out of trouble. We also find in 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 8 that if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. If we're not out working to take care of our families, working with our own hands, not depending on everybody else, there's a very big difference in being able to depend and depending on someone else. We're there to help each other, not to be each other's crutches. We think about some things in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 23 that all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. This whole getting in there and gossiping about other people, getting into other people's business, that's only trouble. But in our work, there's profit. In our labor, there's profit. You think about the formula for honest living really isn't as complicated as some of the things that we get into every day. Just figuring up the mileage your car is getting per gallon is more complicated than this formula. It's just as easy. Study to be quiet, plus do your own business, plus work with your own hands. And Paul says that will put us so that we can walk honestly towards those that are not Christians. They'll recognize us. They'll know us because of the way we behave. And he says even there that we will lack for nothing. And that's something comforting. We're not going to lack anything. We'll have everything we need. And people are going to recognize it. And we're not even trying to make them. They just won't be able to help it. A simple formula for how to live an honest life that Paul gives the brothers there in Thessalonica. And he gives it to us as well. Something to think about and take advantage of. Again, some math is really hard. This math isn't real hard. It isn't real hard at all. And we have an opportunity to maybe make it right for the first time. Maybe we haven't been working with our own hands. Maybe we need to get involved in working with ourselves. Maybe we've been the busybody and not minding our own business. Well, the great thing is we can fix it. That's the wonderful thing about the path we walk. When we stray, we have a Lord who allows us to come back. He doesn't shut us out. He simply says, ask forgiveness. He's quick to forgive it. If it's for the first time we're coming to Christ through confession and repentance and belief and baptism, that's amazing. The water's still there. I was just up there. The water's still there. It's still ready. And we can help you with whatever you need. If there's something that needs to be fixed after having come to Christ for the first time, we're all here too. Ready to pray for you, ready to help you in any way we can. We do need to know about it though. Let us know if you would while we stand and sing. When the